best practices teaching tip is how to make your class more interactive and exciting. With all the talk about student engagement in our classrooms and outside the classrooms, I thought this would be a really timely topic to take a look at. Why is student engagement so important anyway? We all know that once students feel connected to the lesson, it tends to make them learn more and learn at a deeper level. It helps to develop their higher order thinking skills, and they actually want to learn and enjoy learning. Most of us lecture as the primary means of delivering information in our classes, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I like to say this because sometimes we learn new methods of delivering information and think we should just abandon the lecture. Not so. I like to use the 20-minute rule of lecturing, though, which basically states that after about 20 minutes of lecturing in a classroom, you do something different, because after that time, people kind of check out, they're not listening, they're starting to make their Home Depot list in their heads and things like that. So after about maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, pause and do something different. You can ask questions and get the students to respond. You can show perhaps a video clip that reinforces the content, or just do something that changes up the lecture. How about trying a guided lecture? A guided lecture is one in which, for example, you tell the students to put down their pens and pencils and tell them not to take any notes. They probably are going to freak out for a minute, but just tell them to stick with you on it and lecture for maybe about 15 minutes. When you're finished lecturing, tell them to write down everything that they have learned or remembered, and then have them get into small groups and discuss it and complete the notes and work together on that project. I also like to do just kind of some other tidbits to motivate students to actually listen actively in the classroom. The first thing is, I speak clearly and loudly enough such that everyone can actually hear, and when it comes to distributing handouts and tests and quizzes and things like that, I never do it at the beginning of class. I know most people also do that. I give it back to them at the end of class, and I also have a one-session rule, and that is you cannot ask me any questions about the test or quiz until the next class session. And this forces the students to have to go home and review the test or quiz and find out why they got the answers right or wrong. And then if they still had questions, then they can come back and ask me questions at the next class session. And the last thing, which is probably the most important, is to show real enthusiasm in your class. Let the students see that you love your subject and your job. And they're going to actually catch on to that, and it's going to be infectious. You also want to take advantage of the power of interaction. Students love when they're doing something and they can learn from it. So start a lesson by doing something and posing a real problem for students to work on. It could be something that perhaps has happened to you, or a case study, or something that you could even make it up, but make sure it's relevant to the students. And then have them consult with each other and see how they would solve the problem. Now, hopefully they would have done some pre-reading such that they would have the information available to be able to elucidate the solution to the problem. And most importantly, you want to connect whatever examples or problems you use to the outside world. This is where the civic engagement and the service learning can come in. You want to be able to assign assignments and projects and things like that actually have the students to do something. Make them go out, make them meet people, interview people, volunteer somewhere, and do something that actually will mean something to their lives. They will remember it, they will learn the content, and it really enriches them as citizens as well. So here are some things to try. What I do sometimes, and I've spoken to some of my colleagues as well that do this, sometimes they might give content information that they plan to teach that particular day with no headings. They just kind of give a little summary of some information, and then they ask the students, either in a group setting or individually, to put a heading on it, and then they discuss how they came about putting those headings in place. Or you can do the converse and actually give headings and maybe a few important terms, and let the students fill in the details. I usually do this as either a homework assignment, and I usually put it out there online because I don't give out notes in my class. So these are the students' notes, for example, because they need to go ahead and read and fill in the blanks and fill in the empty outline. You can also, and I think it's a very enriching thing for the students to do, is to pair teach. And so students can explain how they did something to each other. And you can do this in class. You can do it outside of class. You could do it in iCollege. You could do it as a web page. There are all kinds of ideas. So I think by students having to explain conceptual relationships to other students, it really helps to solidify their own understanding. Thank you for listening to this week's Best Practices Teaching Tip. See you next time.